Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to our Believe, Trust, Transform yoga event. Today is International Day, it's International Yoga Day, it's summer solstice, and I hope that you are all having a marvelous day. Thank you so much for everybody who has come to the sessions today. They've been really, really wonderful. And I am really looking forward to sharing something myself this evening. So I'm introducing myself. If you're there in Hopin, then you'll see where the replays are. You can check those out at any time to revisit any sessions you missed or want to play again. And if you're here on Facebook or on YouTube, and if you find this helpful and useful, the stuff that we're sharing, then please do feel free to share. So we're going to hop right into our session this evening, which is entitled Shifting Perspectives. And it's a really, really interesting and quite empowering topic to explore. And it brings a lot of things that you find in different East Asian philosophies. So we're going to be looking at this topic of the mind and the human condition, which has been explored for thousands of years by many, many people. And if you're familiar with Buddhism or other East Asian philosophies, some of what we're discussing tonight might well be familiar to you, and the lens that yoga looks at it on is quite similar as well. So we'll be looking at this topic. We'll be sprinkling a little bit of yoga philosophy on the discussion, and over the next 25 minutes will be a bit of a mixed session. So we're going to begin in a moment with a lovely meditation to kind of set the scene. And then we will do a small contemplation, possibly sharing exercise, followed by our look at one of the yoga sutras. More on that soon. And then we're going to end with a very, very gentle practice of a few postures to help consolidate and put into practice all that we are discussing. So let's get started. I'd like to invite you to join me in a meditation just for 2 or 3 minutes. So if you're unfamiliar with meditation, please don't worry at all. Gently finding yourself in a nice, comfortable place. So I'm on the floor and I'm sitting on a cushion, and for me, that's quite comfortable. But if you're on the sofa, if you're on a work chair, then make sure you're comfortable. Perhaps lean a little bit forward so your back's not pressing against the back behind you. And if the legs are crossed and you're sitting on the sofa or a chair, uncross them. If you're lying down, or if you'd like to lie down, please go ahead. And then take a moment to get comfortable, maybe roll through the shoulders or move around just a little bit. See how everything feels. Finding something comfortable to do with your hands. And when you're ready, gently allow the eyes to close. From here, take a couple of nice deep breaths in and out of the nose if that's comfortable for you. And relax the shoulders. And relax the jaw. Letting go of the day so far. And knowing if it was difficult to get here, or if you wondered whether you might make it or not. Just take a moment to accept where you are. And that you're right here, right now, with nothing else to do. And from this place, behind your closed eyes, let your gaze become really wide. And imagine or visualize that you are looking into the night sky. Now, the night sky that you are looking into is the clearest, most spectacular sky you have ever encountered. Thousands upon thousands of stars are peppered all over the black canvas. And the more you look, the more you see. And you may have encountered a sky like this before. You may be remembering a time where you experienced this sky. Or maybe you're remembering a picture from a book, or a picture you've seen at some time, somewhere, someplace. And the more you look, the more stars you see, and you begin to feel this sense of calm, this sense of serenity wash over you. And this sky represents your mind. And it represents your mind without the noise. There are no clouds. There's no light pollution. There's nothing between you and the sky that you see. And if you can, applying this to your mind, has there been a time in your life where you have experienced this true sense of being, where you have the potential to do anything? And most of us have experienced this, maybe even just for a couple of seconds, maybe not very often, maybe not for many years, but most kids live in this way. So just take another 30 seconds now in silence and see if you can tap into this place of true freedom. And all the potential in the world. Good. And then very slowly begin to allow your eyes to open. And as they do, you start to take in the colors around you, the shapes, the sounds. And before too long, that sense of serenity, that blissful, calm state begins to become a distant memory as the thoughts and the worries and the stresses around you start to come back into the world. And maybe they never left. Maybe that last 5 minutes was very difficult for you, and sometimes it is, especially if things are very noisy in the mind. And these niggles or thoughts or stresses are what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to look at the ways in which we can understand them a little bit better to give us more chance to access the space that lives beneath them, the sky outside of these glaciers, they are called in Sanskrit. But before we dig a little deeper into the glaciers, I would love for you to take just a moment, just 20 or 30 seconds, and contemplate or share, if you like, in the chat, 3 things that are on your plate at the moment. What are the 3 things that are hanging around, that feel heavy, that are on your shoulders, in your backpack, dragging at your heels, not giving you a break? They could be big, they could be small, they could have been hanging around for a while now, or maybe they are new. What are the biggest concerns for you right now? And just 3. So if you like, you can share, or you can just make a mental note, or if you have a pen, jot them down. And then save those for later as we now dive deep into one Yoga Sutra. So if you were here in Lizel's chat yesterday, we talked a little bit about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So yoga comes from several different texts, and one of the main texts on yoga is by Patanjali, who may have been one person, who may have been multiple people. And it's my favorite text for sure. And it's immense. And it's immense how much is, in fact, all of it is relevant today, thousands of years later. And it's wonderful to explore and to apply when we are going through stresses and strains of everyday life. So the glaciers that we're talking about, these niggles, these thoughts, these stresses, are Patanjali calls them obstacles or afflictions, and they are best understood for me using the metaphor of a tree. And this is how my teacher taught them to me. And there are 5 glaciers, and they all work together. So they come from the roots, from the ground, they're the foundations, and then they move their way up through the trunk of the tree, and then they come through the branches, and then eventually they manifest as the fruit. And these 5 glaciers are a pattern of the way that we perceive the world around us. And by understanding this pattern, we are better able to take a step back from the thoughts, from the glaciers, from the obstacles in the way of the starry sky. So I'm going to share with you a picture here, a slide. And this, the tree of fear, my teacher called it, and it is a representation of the glaciers. So the first glacier is there at the bottom, and it is avidya. And avidya actually is a Sanskrit word that translates as ignorance. But for me, I prefer to use the word misperception, because ignorance to me has different connotations. And it's not an ignorance of a lack of knowing, it's an ignorance of oneself or one's true nature, which to me can be a little bit confusing. And so I like to use the word misperception. And it's when we confuse reality and what we see is not true. So the easiest way to understand the foundations here, the roots, and this is the cause of all of the issues in our life, is when we perceive something to be impermanent to be permanent when it is impermanent. So it's when we think something can't change, when in fact the nature of everything is that it will change. And I heard this story a few years ago. And actually, it's one that we use in my house quite a lot as a joke, but the story is very, very true. And I'm going to share it with you to help us understand how this misperception, this wrong knowledge, this ignorance um, causes pain to us. So there was a gentleman, a wealthy guy who had a big house and many material possessions. He loved his stuff and he had stuff everywhere. And he had a staff. These big houses have housekeepers and cooks and cleaners and all of these people. He had this staff and he had his house. And one of his most prized possessions were his china mugs. So very, very beautiful cups or mugs or that he felt very, very strongly about. Perhaps they had been passed down over the years through generations, who knows? But he was pretty keen on these mugs. And one day, one of the housekeepers, or one of the cleaners, or one of the staff smashed the mug by accident, but dropped it and smashed it and broke it. And the man of the house was absolutely distraught and very, very angry, and let his anger out on this housekeeper. And the housekeeper, who was a very humble man, probably without a lot of the material possessions that this wealthy man had. And he said, "Well, what, sir, did you think it was going to last forever?" And I love this saying because it reminds us that nothing is going to last forever. And if we think it will, then we are mistaken. And we use this in my house a lot. And maybe you can use it in your house too, to take away the seriousness of when you misunderstand that you're going to have it forever. Because whether it's a material possession or something you feel or a relationship or anything, it will not last forever. And this is what we as people must understand to be liberated. And from here, we move up into the trunk of the tree, which is called asmita or ego. And this can manifest as this kind of very rigid self-identification. So we wear many hats. We wear many labels. We're mothers. We're teachers. We're employees. We're sisters, brothers, aunties. All of the things. And when we identify so strongly, we can really set ourselves up for failure. If we identify as one thing and something goes wrong, maybe it will hurt our self-esteem and our confidence, and the expectations and the pressure that we can put on ourselves to be this label can be immense and another source of pain. From here, we move up into the tree and they branch off in two ways. So on one branch, we have Raja, which is attachments. And this is when we cling to something. This is the cause of addiction. This is when we find that short-term pleasure, the extra cake or the extra glass of wine, can contribute to long-term pain. It's when we think something is so valuable to us and we cling to it. And again, if you go back to avidya, it's not forever and you will lose it. So the more you cling, the more you want that feeling or that thing, the more pain that we cause ourselves. On the flip side is devesha or aversions. And this is when we run from something, when we experience that resistance. Please don't happen to me again if something happened in the past that was bad. And it causes us to be judgmental. It causes us to be critical. And again, causes pain. You see the relationship here. And then all of these things, and they snake their way up the tree. And if they start to manifest to the very, very top, then we get to abhinivesha, which is the fruit of the tree. It comes from avidya and it moves its way through. And the fruit is our fear of death, or our fear of loss, or our fear of change. And it's when we cling so strong to life that we have this underlying anxiety that can be chronic, and it weighs us down. So if you feel heavy and you don't know why, maybe there is this underlying fear of something that you're going to lose, or that's going to change, or that you're going to die, which is true. And you see the link. It's pretty strong, but the understanding of these patterns can be very, very empowering for us as people with a human mind, because you pick any single person in any circumstance at any age in the world, and all of these things exist. They exist in me. They existed in my daughter this afternoon when we were trying to communicate about something. They exist everywhere that you are. And the goal of yoga is to burn the seed that grows the tree. So how do we do this? Okay, so we burn the seed that grows the tree through practice. Through practice of meditation, through practice of contemplation, of yoga, and of steady, continuous effort without attachment to results. So this is the formula, which is actually another yoga sutra. They all link together. And this is the answer. So whatever the issue is, you can go back to your list of 3 issues. Okay? It doesn't mean you don't need to do these things, but you need to approach them, says the Yoga Sutras, with steady, continuous effort. So show up, be present, work hard, but let go, surrender the result. So it doesn't matter if you win. It doesn't matter if you lose. It doesn't matter if you make money. It doesn't matter if something changes. You let go of the results and then you enjoy the journey. And this is the empowering shift that liberates us from all of these glaciers and all of these obstacles that sit so heavy on our shoulders, heavy in our backpacks, weighing us down. So how do we do this? All right. We do this with meditation and we do this with yoga practice. Now, lucky for us, we have access to our breath and our bodies, and we are able to practice poses or yoga asana, which have this ability to cultivate this feeling of surrender. In yoga, this is called vairagya, and vairagya is a Sanskrit word for surrender of the results. So I would love to join you. I would love you to join me and me to join you in a couple of yoga postures that will help us to experience this sense of letting go. So please join me. Doesn't matter if you're in a suit. It doesn't matter if you're in your PJs. It doesn't matter if you're in the kitchen. You don't need anything but a tiny amount of space. And I invite you, first of all, to stand up and to make your way into a space like this. I'm going to turn around to demonstrate. And I have a cushion and I'm going to show you how to make this a really soft pose if you like, but no worries if you don't have a cushion. So bring your feet about hip distance apart. If you've been sitting for some time, maybe giving yourself a little bit of a move from side to side, maybe a shake through the arms or a roll through the shoulders. And then take a big breath in, raise the arms up. Take up all the space around you in a nice big stretch. And then as you exhale, bend your knees and allow the whole body to fall forward. Good. And if you like, you can bring a little pillow or something beneath the hands, beneath the wrists for even more support. But if you don't have one, don't worry. Fingertips to the ground. Now you can stay here, or it might be even more comfortable to take hold of your elbows. Keep a bend in the knees, let the belly rest towards the thighs. Take a breath in, and as you breathe out, let your head and neck get very, very heavy. Now, if you're new to yoga, this might feel a little bit strange. But the idea here is that this head low position, so head below the heart, is very pacifying for the body. It's very pacifying for the mind, and it's almost like the thoughts are literally dropping out of the top of your head. So you can close your eyes if you like, and if you'd rather keep them open, just let them be very steady on a point that you can see. Almost as if your gaze gets really wide, really soft. And we're going to stay for 3 more breaths. So gently closing the lips, breathe in through the nose. And out through the nose. 2 more times. Good. One last time. And as you exhale this time, maybe try to straighten the legs a little more. Try to let the head and neck fall even further towards the floor. Maybe hands to the floor if they were on the elbow. And let go. Release, relax, soften it. Good. And then bringing the fingertips a little bit in front of you, bend the knees, bring the heels away from the floor. Draw yourself onto the toes. Take a moment, you might feel dizzy from having your head low. Lean into your sitting bones and bring your feet out in front of you. So take a moment, you might be feeling even a little bit dizzy, and that's totally normal. So take your time here, bottoms of the feet come together, knees are out to the side. If you have very tight hips, feet further away, nice big diamond shape here between the legs. If your hips are feeling pretty warm and movable, and then bring them closer to you. This is butterfly pose. The first one was called a standing forward fold. So take a moment, get comfortable, shift a little side to side, and then breathe in and lean back. And as you breathe out, soften everything forward. So maybe there onto the hands, maybe a little lower. Head and neck heavy once again. Now close the eyes if you feel comfortable. Let all the muscles of the head, of the face, of the jaw, of the neck, of the shoulders begin to melt. And begin to breathe in and out of the nose. And make the exhale slightly longer than the inhale. And with each exhale, imagine softening in just a little bit more. Letting something go. So these kleshas, these obstacles, these afflictions, yes, they show up as thoughts. But over the years, over the decades, they build up inside the body too. Maybe they manifest as achy, or tight muscles or joints, and the hips, the shoulders. The saying, the weight of the world on my shoulders, actually, maybe, is just about the glaciers. So for the next 2 breaths, as you exhale, imagine or visualize a total release. Physical, mental, emotional. Good. And then when you are ready, slowly, bringing yourself back up to sit. Allow your spine to lengthen back up. You can draw your legs in so they're nice and comfortable. Maybe take a moment to shift around, bring the hands onto the legs and just notice how you feel physically. Maybe a little lighter, a little brighter, a little calmer. And you're welcome to stay for a moment or two as we gently conclude our session today. And just knowing that everything that happens inside of your head is totally normal. Everybody experiences it most of the time. And all we do in yoga is practice applying these nuggets of philosophy which help us to logically rationalize or conceptualize or understand what's going on within the walls of the mind. And then we use meditation and we use postures to process and release and connect to the body through the breath. So I really hope that you found this session interesting and useful. If you have any questions, do start to type them in the chat box. I'd really love to hear from you, your thoughts. And that brings us to the end.
Thank you. That was really interesting. It was really interesting for me to hear it from a yogic perspective. So I've heard about attachment and aversion in other traditions. So it was really good. One thing that helped me understand about that concept was a little example that I was told once about a chef who makes a bowl of soup. So if you have sort of 6 people sitting around a table and the chef brings out the soup and he serves the soup to all of these people, and 2 people say it's the best soup they've ever had, and one person says they're not sure, and somebody says it's too salty, and another person has another opinion, then what's the soup? So some people are pulling it towards them, some people are pushing it away, and but what's the soup? It's that helped me.
It's really good, isn't it? I find it so helpful when you have a metaphor or something that helps you to consolidate, because sometimes the philosophy can be a little bit out there, a little bit woo-woo, but if you have this imagery and this metaphor, it can be so much more useful.
Yeah.
And then you can teach it to your kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I was wondering, listening to this, is around when we get hung up on stuff. So the desires obviously are okay. Everybody wants an ice cream from time to time. That's fine. But the problems come when you don't have one, or they don't have the flavor that you want. So, in those instances when people fall out of their balanced state. So you might want a cigarette, you might want a beer, you might want a donut, you might want to get out of that meeting, you might want to get away from this person that you've deemed not valuable use of your time. What are Are there any sort of quick tips or any ways to kind of snap yourself back into a better state to kind of let go of those hang-ups and those aversions and come back to a better
Yeah,
spot?
that's a really good question. And I think whoever has the absolute answer to that would be a millionaire. But I think if you apply this idea of letting go or surrendering the results, so remembering that whatever it is that you want that's out there may be attainable, may not be attainable in this moment. And if you can bring this softness and this release to wanting, then perhaps you can move forward. And I think probably the first thing is recognizing that it is an attachment or an aversion, if it's an aversion, because often in that moment we are so hung up that the energy spirals out of control and we don't know we're in that place until later. And
Mm.
so I think, yeah, if you can recognize you're there, then amazing. And if you do, then maybe take a deep breath, maybe notice where the breath is, maybe bring it a little bit lower, soften the shoulders, soften the jaw, release the tension of the body, and then try to surrender the end result. It's about the process, not the getting something.
And that's where the hard work shows, I suppose, isn't it? In the cultivating the mindfulness and the awareness to know where you are in that moment. And that's where there are no shortcuts, I suppose, with all of this. You have to train
Yeah,
yourself to notice it in the first place.
yeah. And I think it's a practice of a lifetime. You could practice it a million times and still fail on the a millionth and one. I think maybe you'll know this, Martin. I think is there is something in Buddhism even where you have to practice it 100 times in a row, and if you fail at like the 98th time, you have to start again at the first.
Yeah.
Um, I've heard this somewhere.
Yeah. It's like a metaphor of pushing a rock up a mountain with your chin. And if you slip, the sort of rock rolls down again, and then you have to do it again.
Start over. Yeah.
Yeah. There's loads of like Zen Buddhist stories as well of masters just making people like build a temple, and then as soon as they've finished it, they're excited, and then the master's like, okay, great, now take it all down again and build it over there, and
Yeah.
they, and they just keep making
It's
it.
the same as those mandalas they build with the tiny grains of sand.
Yeah,
Um, and then they build it and it takes them hours and days and then
yeah,
you just throw
gone
it away.
into the
Yeah,
river.
start again.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Brilliant. Okay, I'm not paying enough attention to the chat, so we've had some nice comments from people. I'm not sure if we've had any questions yet. Oh, Penny, it's nice to see you too. It's been a while. No, lots of people enjoyed the tree metaphor, and
I'm gonna flash some comments up here. I think it's nice when it's feeling relevant to you as well, when you can apply it to your life.
yeah, for sure, for sure. What's this one? Buddhism sounds mean. Yeah, Zen Buddhist traditions can be really, really mean. It's I think the first thing they do is you have to sit by a wall. You have to face the wall. So when they're meditating, they face the wall. And the first sort of year of your practice, they come down and hit you with a stick if your posture's not quite right. So yoga's a bit softer than that.
Fantastic.
Cool. All right, Carrie, I'll hand over to you
Okay,
and let you wrap it up.
thank you very much. So we are really, really thankful to everybody that was here this evening, or if you're catching us on the replay. And tomorrow is our last and final day of this 3-day yoga adventure that we are on. And tomorrow is the transformation. So yesterday we were believing in ourselves. Today we're learning to trust and actually know that deep down inside we do really know the truth. And that if we let go of the mind, we can access this. And tomorrow, actually, we're going to experience how we make that transformation. So tomorrow morning, we're going to kick off with a beautiful restorative yoga practice with Orly, which is going to use some of this stuff that we've talked about tonight, the vairagya, the letting go, the surrendering through posture and breath. Great to set us up for a Thursday, end of the week kind of vibes. Then we are with Liesel at lunchtime for another wonderful session about how to build habit, how to build sustainable habits. So we're talking about practice, and it does take practice. None of this is going to happen overnight. There is not a pill you can take to do this. And so, how do you build this habit, and how do you enjoy it? And this is with Liesel, and it's philosophy, and it's wonderful and practical, and hopefully provide you with the tools that you need. And then finally, tomorrow evening, I'll be back here, and we're going to do a meditation together about loving kindness and compassion, and really bringing ourselves forward into the world. So thanks so much for being here, and we'll see you in the morning.